Hey, what's up guys? This is Justin Johnson. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down the most helpful fingerpicking tips that I've learned over the years. So some of these things have to do with like improving your technique or certain techniques you should employ. Some of these things have to do with improving the way you practice so that you're getting more out of your practice time and improving faster. And then some of these are just simple things you can start doing that will immediately benefit your tone, your dexterity, and how you play on the instrument. Also, these techniques will apply to any skill level. So whether you're an advanced player who's trying to get better at fingerpicking, just wanting to pick some tips up, or if you're a total beginner who's just, starting to learn how to play guitar, starting to learn how to fingerpick, these techniques are going to be just as relevant to all skill levels. Okay, so this tip right here, I believe, is the most important thing that you should learn when you're fingerpicking. This should be probably the first thing you learn when you fingerpick. This is how to position your hand most effectively, like in the best position possible for the most control, most articulation when you're fingerpicking. And I call it the fist method. So you'll see what I mean by that in just a second. First of all, you want to have the guitar in proper playing position. You want to anchor your forearm right on the edge of the guitar right here. So you want your forearm to be touching right there. You want your forearm to be coming down basically towards the sound hole on an acoustic guitar like this one. And look, if I straighten my fingers out, just observe how my fingers are straight. My wrist is straight. That's important. Don't angle your wrist down like this. That's going to be painful over time. It's going to lead to bad hand posture there. And so again, straight. And now once you're like that, just make a fist like this. Notice something specific about this when you make a fist, that your thumb rolls over your fingers. You don't make a fist like this. You make a fist like this with your fingers tucked in and your thumb on the outside. And so that is the way that we're going to pick. That's the way you should be picking. So when you pick with any of your fingers, they should be curling up and going on the inside of your hand like this, like you're making a fist. With the thumb, when you're plucking it, it should be rolling around the outside of your index finger. What this does is this avoids your index finger and your thumb colliding, and it starts to really get you in the right mindset for what muscles and what triggers should be, firing when you're actually picking a string. So lay your fingers now with this kind of loose fist, lay them on the strings, starting at the A string with your thumb, like the 5th string, and then each of your fingers down on the next string. So thumb on the A, index on the D, middle on the G, ring on the B, pinky on the E string. And so just feel that, your hand is coming down nice and straight, and you've got your fingers on one of each of those strings. Now look at my thumb. My thumb right here is kind of like giving a thumbs up. It's pointing up at the headstock. So now you're in that position. Your fingers are each touching one of those strings. I'm going to make an A minor chord over here with my fretting hand. And now what you want to do is just make a fist. Just like that. Feel that motion. All of those fingers firing at the same time. And now I've got a fist. See that? That is the key to proper posture. That's the key to comfortable control. That's the key to having good, the right muscles firing when you're plucking a note. Whatever you're playing, that's basically the motion that's happening. So especially if you're a beginner, before you practice anything, before you start practicing finger picking exercises, get in that position and feel that formation of the fist, and you'll be in the correct position. All right, this tip right here is all about dynamics. Dynamics are one of the techniques, one of the aspects of music, I should say, that's probably most overlooked, not just by guitar players, but in general, and especially when you're practicing. I never really hear people talking about practicing not just the notes, not just the patterns, but practicing dynamics. So dynamics, basically, that refers to the volume level of your notes. So you can play quietly, or you can play loudly. And there's a big difference in your musculature, especially with your anchor up here when you're playing quietly versus loudly. You're plucking harder, therefore everything is working harder. And so you really need to practice that in order to do that well and to do that in a performance, in a controlled way. So what you need to do is when you're practicing your finger picking, and I think the best way to practice finger picking is with patterns. So you start with a finger picking pattern, and I suggest you really do this with 5 finger picking patterns, because what that'll do, and what I mean by that is picking patterns that employ all 5 fingers, because that'll help you develop musculature and muscle memory in your non-dominant fingers, like your pinky and ring finger. So take a pattern like this, one of my favorite patterns. This is over the A minor chord. A lot of people just practice it like that over and over again. And you always hear, and I think it's always very important, you should practice to a consistent rhythm. You should only practice as fast as you can play it consistently. That'll help you build up speed. But the other element that you should be thinking about is practicing with different dynamics. So play that same finger picking pattern quietly. And then play it basically as loudly as you can with it still sounding good. You don't want it to be like, you don't want it to be like that, but try to play it as loud as you can with the same dynamic level on all fingers. That's really important. You don't want one finger to be plucking a lot louder than the other one. You want them to be very even. When you want really good control over this, you should practice what's called crescendo and decrescendo. And crescendo is when you start soft and get loud, and a decrescendo is when you start loud and get soft. So when you're playing a finger picking pattern like this, to take it to the next level and to really develop, ultimate control over your dynamics, you should practice crescendoing and decrescendoing while you're playing this finger picking exercise. Okay, this finger picking tip is one of my favorite tips. And it's one of my favorite tips because it's, for one, I think the easiest thing you can do to improve your finger picking. And it doesn't just relate to finger picking. It's great for guitar overall. It'll improve your dexterity. It improves your tone. It'll make everything you're doing easier. And you don't actually have to play anything or practice anything to do this. So what I'm talking about is soaking your hands before you play, soaking your hands in hot water. So what I generally do is I will turn the water on this in the sink and get the water hot enough to where it's as hot as I can comfortably hold my hands under. Don't do anything that's uncomfortable. Don't burn yourself, of course. That should be obvious. But what you're basically doing, it's like giving your hands like a hot bath. And what it does is I hold my hands under the water and I kind of stretch them out a little bit as I'm doing them. Nothing intense, just kind of stretching my hands and letting the water soften my calluses. The water just loosen my hand up. I'll do that for a minute or two before I start playing. And so what this does, one, is it softens your calluses. So when you fret notes, you're actually fretting them and they sound more solid. They're making more solid contact with the frets when you do this because your calluses aren't like hard. Also, you get less string squeaks with both your left hand fretting and your right hand when you're plucking. The other nice thing that happens, when I fingerpick, I use the flesh of my fingers. I don't have long fingernails. I use the flesh of my fingers, and I get a more solid and consistent attack on the strings after I've soaked my hands for a couple of minutes. Another nice thing that it does is it relaxes the muscles, it loosens up the muscles in your hands, and so your dexterity and your control is immediately better after you've done this. And the other thing is it increases the circulation in your hands, so you just feel better. You have more control. Sometimes my hands will be a little stiff and I'll have to warm up in order to loosen this up. And basically, running your hands under the hot water like this, it basically warms you up without you having to play anything. It's pretty amazing. When I started doing this, I noticed a definite improvement, especially in my tone, not just in my playing, but when I'm recording myself, like close micing myself on the acoustic guitar in the studio. I noticed a huge difference, a noticeable difference in the way that the guitar sounded. It sounded warmer, it sounded more, organic, and there was a lot less noise and just, it just was like melting butter over the tone. It's pretty interesting. So try that, you'll thank me later. Okay, this finger picking tip is going to not just improve your, picking when it comes to like finger picking patterns like this or like this, but it's going to help improve your finger picking when you're playing melodies and lead lines. And so what you want to do is you want to practice scales, but you want to practice scales with different combinations of fingers. So let me take the G major scale in third position right here, just as an example. So a lot of people would play this with a flat pick, nothing wrong with that, but this whole lesson is about finger picking. So what you want to do to start off with is let's alternate your thumb and index finger with this scale. Next, try playing it with your index and your middle finger. Notice when I do that, my thumb moves to mute the strings up here. My thumb moves with my two fingers up and down. So all these different combinations of fingers will improve a different type of muscle memory. So, take it slow, of course, at first. Really focus on consistency of motion. Make sure that your tone with each finger sounds as close, as similar as possible. You don't want one finger sounding different than the other. But by doing this with different combinations of fingers when you practice, eventually you're going to have amazing control over finger picking, lead guitar, and melody lines. Okay, so this finger picking technique is one of my favorites. This is one of my favorite ways to practice right hand technique specifically, and it's kind of a lifesaver no matter what skill level you're at, but it is an absolute lifesaver, I think, when you're a beginner who's learning to finger pick and you're really just wanting to drill right hand technique. So what I'm talking about is I'm talking about tuning to an open chord, or you can say tuning to an open tuning, instead of fretting a chord while you're practicing finger picking. So a lot of times when I teach finger picking, I teach it to start out with, I teach finger picking patterns because I think finger picking patterns are the best way to develop control and articulation and tone and start to play on tempo rhythmically. Just keeping a chord, like an open chord or something over here, and then practicing a pattern like this. But what happens is when you're doing this for 5 minutes, and then you're doing it for 10 minutes, and then you're doing it for 20 minutes with these different finger picking patterns. what happens is your right hand feels fine, but your left hand starts to cramp up. You're doing these open chords, sometimes the same open chord for long periods of time. And the act of pushing down those strings, especially when you're a beginner, but really any skill level, if you just hold the same chord for more than 5 or 10 minutes, it's bad. It's not really good for you either. And so the tip that I'm giving you is to tune your guitar to whatever open chord you want to hear. So let's say in this case, I'm going to tune to an E minor. So an E minor right here is open, 2nd fret, and then the rest of the strings are open. So let's just tune those 2 strings right there, the A and the D string. Let's tune those up a whole step like this. I'm going to tune that A to a B. And I'm going to tune that D to an E. Now when I strum it, I've got an E minor chord. The same thing applies to finger picking. So now I can finger pick on any string here with this E minor chord, and it'll sound musical. And I don't have to do anything with my left hand. Now I can practice finger picking much longer. I can do this longer without cramping up my left hand. And it's this strategy of practicing one hand at a time that can really help improve your technique. An additional benefit to practicing this way is that you get to focus on just one hand. You're not thinking about, am I fretting this chord right? And if you're first starting to learn open chords, that's a whole thing in and of itself over here with the left hand. You might start muting a string accidentally over here. You might not have a string pressed down hard enough. And then when you hit a wrong note or it doesn't sound right, you might think it's your picking hand. So by doing this, by tuning to an open chord like this, you can practice knowing that what I'm practicing right now is my right hand technique, my picking hand technique. And so it'll really help fast track your progress. It'll allow you to practice comfortably for longer periods of time. And just make you more aware of what you're doing with your picking hand. All right, thanks again for watching, guys. Hope you got some good tips out of this video. Again, these tips are things that I've learned that have helped me the most in finger picking. And a lot of these I've never heard anyone mention. These are things that are some of them are kind of random. Some of them might seem like obvious once you hear about them. But, the reason I'm sharing them with you is because these things will help fast track your learning process. They'll help make you more comfortable. And for me, they were just kind of like aha moments, some of them that really helped break through a plateau or helped me practice better and get better faster. If you want to dig deeper into these finger picking techniques, then check out my new website, justinjohnsonguitar.com. It has basically all of the 6-string guitar lessons I've ever put out, all in one place. There's an entire course. There's several courses on finger picking. There's an entire brand new course for total beginners. So even if you haven't even picked up a guitar before, but you want to get into it, I will teach you from day one all the way through learning chords, learning how to finger pick like I was just talking about, learning how to strum, how to read guitar music, how to read chord progressions. And then I take it all the way through the intermediate and advanced phases as well. There's a ton of content for even players who are wanting to learn some of the most complex finger picking techniques, percussive rhythm techniques, solo guitar arrangements. I have a ton of content there, so please check it out. If you appreciate this lesson, you want to dive a little deeper, that's the place to do it. JustinJohnsonGuitar.com. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. You rock. Bye.